YouTube, hello. Twitch, hello. Happy Friday. No, Saturday. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend. Thanks for joining us. I always do that. My name is Nathan Goheen. This is Anne Marie joining me again. So we're happy to have her here. I put some links to her work in the video description, her website, and then also her YouTube channel. So check those out after you check out this video. If you've got any questions or comments or anything, drop them in the chat, and hopefully one of us will see those and respond to it. Let's see here. So this week there was a quote that caught my attention, and it was by the painter Mark Rothko. And he said, "The artist, like the philosopher, must constantly adjust eternity, as it were, to all the specifications of the moment." And I thought that this was really cool because I haven't heard anyone talk about, or maybe talk in these terms, about being for lack of a better phrase, up to date, and also how that reconciles with everything that's happened before in your artistic field, and probably not knowing, but just realizing that there's going to be lots of things after you've created your artistic work. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool. Before I say too much more about it, I want to ask you if you have any thoughts about that.
I don't have a lot of thoughts about it, but I do have a comment. When I've heard you say the quote, immediately I thought about our ability to adjust our thinking as things change, as we learn more, as we gather more information. I think this is like the bullet point or the soundbite of this quote, is opening yourself up to adjusting your philosophy with regards to your creative process, or it can be applied in general in life too. Like, as you get new information, it's good to be open to adjustments.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense to me. I think in like such a subjective world as creative pursuits, you get to pick and choose a little bit more in terms of what you acknowledge that has come before. Like, we can look at like a painting from the 1400s, and we can enjoy that and recognize that and put it into our work, whereas maybe a piece of knowledge from the 1400s is completely outdated now. But maybe that's not true. Maybe in the painting in the 1400s they had a really cool idea, but their perspective on the painting was all, but their actual perspective of the painting was all messed up. So you can't use all of it. I don't know.
I would agree with you on that. You can't use all of it, but there's always something to be learned, I think. So you can always gain something from it. Okay,
that's true enough. And then I kind of like condensing the timeline a little bit. I always think it's really interesting what people recognize. some people play only acoustic music, right? Despite the fact that electronic instruments have been around for coming up on 100 years now. They're like, I'm just going to deal with acoustic instruments. And some people just deal with electronic instruments, and they give no regard to all of the music that has come before now. And I just think it's interesting what choices we make to inform our music or our art, and how those are constantly being updated by our contemporaries. They maybe break some new ground with a release of music, and so we kind of have to acknowledge that or not. And I think that's, I misinterpret Mark Rothko all the time, so I could be doing that here. But I think it's kind of along that same thought process of adjusting eternity to the specifications of the moment. In terms of adjusting eternity, I think it's like you want to put your most true piece out there. So I think that's what maybe he means by when he says eternity. What is the truest, axiom that you've got? What's going to last the longest?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty like a good assessment of it or realization of it. I mean, when I think of eternity, like you said, I think of what's going to last the longest, but that word must constantly, or the phrase must constantly adjust eternity, tells me that whatever is going to last forever needs to have an ability to be adjusted. But maybe I'm wrong in that interpretation. Maybe not need, but should or can have the ability to be adjusted. So it's not just confined to that period or that time or that moment, but it can evolve.
I think that's kind of like the thing of it, is to make it of that moment, specific to that moment, but to adjust to eternity. Not everything specific of that moment is going to last.
Okay, but maybe for the viewer, like for the creator, it lasts for that moment, but for the viewer, it can be adjusted. Because I think as a visual artist, you look at a painting and it may have meant something different for the artist for the time, but as a viewer now and here, it's probably going to mean something different for me. But there is something everlasting about it because we're still enjoying it, or we're still finding relevance in it in our modern time.
Okay.
And that's where I'm going with that quote, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I think it's kind of one of those things that, like, right or wrong, as long as you think something about it, it's going to be interesting. Sometimes it's fun to be misinterpreted, to get an insight into how someone else thinks.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we have conversations, right? It's not always being in a bubble and agreeing with each other. It's having contradictory interpretations of things and then talking through it.
Right.
And coming either to some middle ground or saying, let's agree to disagree.
Right. Right. The classic phrase. Oh, man.
But yeah, I mean, from a visual perspective, from a musical perspective, I don't know, there's classical music that I think will last an eternity that will probably never be replicated in our modern time in the way that it affects us now. So that has an eternity within it, but it's constantly adjusting itself based on the experience of the person experiencing it, or the viewer or the listener.
Got you. So the adjustments are made by the interpreter, not the creator.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and I guess there's this artist called William T. Williams. He's one of my favorite visual artists. He was a professor of mine. And when he talks about his work, when you look at his work, he starts with these geometric shapes and these colors. And then he moves on to trying to understand how the material works on the canvas. And then he adjusts that to how do I manipulate the material to make it do something that I want to do. And then he adjusted that to how can I use my physical body, like my hands, to create something where I have a relationship with the canvas, with the material, and myself as the creator. So I thought that was a good perspective with regards to the creator adjusting his process, but there is still something that is constant and eternal, is his relationship with what he's creating.
There you go. It's always home base.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's why you have me here
to keep it interesting.
No, just to throw a wrench in it, I guess.
No, to fine tune it. To throw a wrench in and fine tune it.
No, not fine tune it. I've heard your podcasts before, or your interpretations. They're always great. So I don't think I'm fine tuning anything. I think I'm adding to the conversation.
Okay. Okay.
That's
okay.
it.
Okay. The related to this same quote of Rothko's, it made me think of some Gustav Mahler quotes that I have. I'm a little quote machine. I love quotes, and what Mahler said. Let me see if I can pull it up right quick here. Man down. Let's try this again. Here we go. So what Mahler said, he was talking with another composer. Gustav Mahler was a very famous composer and conductor in the early 20th century. And he was speaking with another very famous composer named Jean Sibelius. What is it? And it says that when they met, Jean Sibelius was finding beauty in the symphony's form and in its logic, right? Because there were very specific rules that you followed to create a symphony, and Sibelius thought that was beautiful. He thought that was the tops, and Mahler vehemently disagreed and said that the symphony must be like the world. It must embrace everything. And so, walking back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, how two people can feel completely different or interpret something completely different is fascinating, because both of those guys created amazing music and they both had completely different outlooks on it. But I think Mahler's is fascinating in that he wanted everything to go into it, all of the history, and all of just to create a work of art and put everything in it is a very different idea than to create a work of art that's about a very specific thing. Like, here's a song about love, or here's a painting about the birth of Jesus Christ. Those are very specific things. You know, painting can maybe is less abstract for people than music. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe instrumental music, I should say. So saying that you want to put the entire world into your symphony is a very different mindset than saying, I'm going to write a song about love.
Interesting.
It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because a part of me wants to say that if you think within the bigger scheme of things, everything kind of ends up being a symphony in a way, because it all kind of interacts and works with each other in some greater scheme of things, even when you're being very specific about something. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Keep going, though.
I don't know. Like, if you think about the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Earth is a very specific planet with specific kind of ecosystem, animals, humans. And then you have another planet that's very specific to an ecosystem, yada, yada, yada. But on the big scheme of thing, where all of it is working together like a symphony to keep everything in balance, to keep everything flowing, even though we don't see it because it's probably at a pace that we're not acknowledging at that moment. But if you can go from bird's eye view, you're like, oh, this is how, and it kind of this is how it's working. And then I guess a smaller bird's eye view is nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go into a certain ecosystem of nature, and then everything, you see a specific tree, you see a specific animal, but then when you think about it, it's all working to keep that ecosystem growing in kind of like a symphony.
Okay, yeah. Very micro macro.
Yeah.
Very micro macro. And I think that's kind of when Mahler was talking about putting everything into his symphony, I think that's at a certain point you're going to have blind spots regardless. So when you try to see the entire, I don't know what word you used, maybe solar system or maybe universe, but if you try to see it in its entirety, you're going to miss something.
Yeah.
When you try to see a forest's entire ecosystem, you're going to miss something. But it's interesting to try to
perceive that.
And then to actively choose what you're presenting versus, I don't know, versus missing.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think it's about balancing that, like knowing that when you're looking at the entire ecosystem, you're going to miss something, and that's okay. But also when you're zoning in on just that specific thing, you're going to miss something, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. So it's that ebb and flow of understanding it's okay to miss something sometimes. And we're constantly, I think, if you are in a space of balance, you're constantly going between the two extremes and finding some kind of middle ground.
Between the macro and the micro?
Yeah. Between thinking about specifically writing a love song and then thinking about encompassing everything within that symphony or that song.
Got you. Okay. That's the trick. Is to get it to work on the micro and the macro. Because most things in the universe seem to function that way. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So it's like, okay, how do we get that? How do we get it to work with eternity and work with the very specific time that it's created in, the very specific moment that it's created in? When you're talking about classical music from back in the day that's never going to be replicated again, that's because it was of a very specific time. And if you replicated it now, it would feel weird and off because there's so much more information out there now than there was 500 years ago when the piece was created, whatever, or probably more like 250 years ago, whatever.
Yeah, and I would agree the environment has changed. You probably can't replicate it again.
Right. But it's interesting to try to say like what your definitions are going to be. Like I'm not going to create something from 250 years ago because it will sound inauthentic. Okay, well then how far up are you willing to push that? I'm not going to create something from 150 years ago because it'll be inauthentic. 50 years, 5 years. I'm not going to create something from 5 months ago because it would be inauthentic. It's just interesting where people put these definitions. And I think probably for a lot of people it's not thought about, which isn't a bad thing at all, but it's just what it is. And I think it's just interesting to think about. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting thought exercise. Yeah, I like thought exercises. Yeah, I definitely think that. And I think you could try to attempt to recreate something, but then it would just become something else because, like I said, the environment has changed, the variables have changed, so it wouldn't be the same. It would be something else, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like there's music out there that is like all it's doing is just updating technology. And I think there's movies out there that is just updating technology. It's like this is the same as an idea from 40 years ago, but we're using different tech than than they had back then.
Mm-hmm. And the viewer experience is different. Like I will, give myself out there. I'm a child of the 80s. And sometimes when I look at movies from the 80s, I'm like, this is so cool. And then sometimes when I look at the technology of how movies were made, some of it is much better, especially with the action stuff, but some of it is like creepy. It's like too much technology.
Oh, now.
Yeah.
Got you.
So when I'm comparing the two, it's like, yeah, I'm good.
Well,
but somebody who's born now in this generation,
right,
this is like awesome and perfect, and it's not creepy at all. So
it's normal.
It's the perspective of the person experiencing it, and the time they're in, and the I guess the environment that will determine whether something is cool or not.
Right, and I mean it's always been like that because someone born in the 1920s was, maybe their first movie was a silent movie, and so then they see a movie from the 1980s and they're like, this is creepy.
Yeah, maybe. Or they'll be like, oh my God, this is sound. I didn't know movies could be like that with sound. It depends. Some people love the future.
Right.
And some people love the past.
Right.
I think, again, you have to flow between the two. Like the idea of the future, what you like about it, but the idea of the past, what you liked about it, but be in your present. Because you can't go back to the past. You can't go to the future because it's the future. Unless you're from Back to the Future movie.
Speaking of movies.
You can go anytime. You got the right DeLorean.
Right. That's what we need is more DeLoreans. But that gets back. How do we constantly adjust eternity to the specifications of the moment?
I guess by being present.
By being present. That's what it always comes back to.
Yeah, that's the easy answer.
Just
the easy answer, but
present.
the hardest to do.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I wasn't this bad this time, talking your ears to death. Remember the last time I was on?
Yeah, you started talking about all sorts of crazy nonsense. I had to reel it in. That's why she wasn't here last week. No, I'm totally kidding. That's not why she was not here last week. But no, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And for the viewers, don't forget to like and share and subscribe to the channel.
Like, share, and subscribe.
We have to do this because that's how the channel grows.
Right.
For anybody, if you happen to be a YouTube creator, you know the challenges of that. So definitely this is the channel's growth and to reach more people. So we'd love your support on that front.
Definitely. And there's a little Venmo in the description. If anybody feels like providing some donations, that would be awesome. Regardless, Every Saturday, there's a live stream at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So...
Oh, and before I go or we go, I also want to say, maybe I should have asked you about this first, but if somebody has a quote that they like,
oh, that's a good
and they
idea.
would like us to discuss, leave it in the comments section. Let us know some of your favorite quotes, and we can see how applicable they are, and we will talk about them.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Because
Really
I
good.
love quotes too. I just don't remember them, but I love them.
Oh, I Google them all the time. I'll like read them, forget them, and then I'll be like, what did that person say about this?
Yeah, the only one I can remember is one from F. Scott Fitzgerald, the ability to hold contradictory ideas and still function, something like that.
Right, to hold in contradictory ideas and like not commit to either one of them, but just analyze them as like a sign of intelligence.
Yeah, I've been able to remember that one vaguely, but
Nice.
yeah.
All right. Well, we should wrap this up because it's getting to be a long time now.
Yeah, that's what happens when I'm here. I talk too much.
It's not you. It's both of us.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you again next week. I hope your week goes well.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.